This should have been a disaster. And by all accounts, when you're adapting an 1,100-page Stephen King novel for network television, yeah, problems are guaranteed to crop up. You're going to have studio interference. You're going to have the master of horror author who's created one of the most ambitious novels of his career. A director with everything to prove, and a television budget that was never going to match King's imagination. A phenomenon that introduced millions of kids to Pennywise the Dancing Clown. It turned sewer drains into portals to childhood nightmares and still somehow managed to traumatize really an entire generation. Under a parental... Today, that sounds completely insane. But millions of families gathered around their televisions anyway and watched one smiling clown become a horror icon. And I was one of them. Imagine, 1990, Battleground, Washington. Small town, quiet streets. I mean, to be honest, it might as well have been Derry, Maine. For weeks, ABC wouldn't shut up about it. Every commercial break, another TV was a 2-night television event. There wasn't streaming, there was no DVR, there wasn't going to be a YouTube clip the next morning. If you wanted to experience it in all of its glory, you sat down when America sat down. I was 7 years old, cross-legged, sitting crisscross applesauce on the living room floor with my family watching after a current affair wrapped up. Absolutely unprepared for what was 1990. Stephen King wasn't just the king of horror, he was practically printing money, let's be honest. Carrie, The Shining, Pet Sematary, Misery. Hollywood couldn't get enough of them, but it was different. This wasn't a 300-page novel you could pretty easily squeeze into a feature film. It was over 11 goddamn pages long, multiple timelines, 7 main characters in the Losers Club, an ancient cosmic entity older than mankind itself. He had childhood trauma, coming-of-age drama, and enough mythology to fill like 3 movies if we're just going to be real. This thing was massive. Trying to adapt it wasn't just difficult, it was pretty much impossible. Originally, George Romero was attached to direct before the project eventually landed in the hands of the capable Halloween 3 Hold My Beer, Tommy Lee Wallace. Now, Wallace wasn't exactly a stranger to horror. He'd worked alongside John Carpenter, he'd made Halloween 3, and he, also wrote a bunch of really cool horror films. Shout out to the Amityville Horror 2, The Possession. He understood that atmosphere was better than most filmmakers of any era. That's what really made movies shine, was the atmosphere. But let's be honest, this was a career-defining gamble. And on top of all that, ABC standards and practices, meaning every scary idea, every violent scene, every disturbing image had to somehow survive network television executives. The chopping block. That means no excessive gore, no R-rated violence, no endless profanity, all the stuff kids like me love now. Everything had to fit comfortably and cleanly inside a PG fucking television event, which sounds pretty ridiculous considering what audiences actually got. Here's the thing people forget though. It isn't really about Pennywise, it's about friendship. Stephen King's novel has always been this coming-of-age story disguised as a horror book. Without the Losers Club, Pennywise is just another monster. You needed people that would believe in each other. Bill is still grieving Georgie. Richie hides behind jokes because he's terrified. Ben's bullied. Beverly lives in fear inside her own home. You can see how these things kind of stack up. Every one of these kids carries invisible scars before Pennywise even dance into a frame, really. That's exactly why Pennywise chooses them. He doesn't create fear, he feeds on what was already there. That's a brilliant concept because it makes the horror feel personal, it makes it feel like it's attached to something tangible. It can affect kids like myself. Freddy invaded dreams, Jason swung a machete, Michael Myers would stalk you. Pennywise studied you. He knew what scared you. He figures out exactly what keeps you awake at night, and he becomes it. For Stan, it's that grotesque woman from the painting, Beverly, the blood coming from the bathroom sink. For Ben, it's the mummy. For Eddie, disease, contamination. It's every scare in it is custom built. It's terrifying because it's not random, it's intimate. It works for everybody. And then there's Tim Curry. Good God. What a performance. Tommy Lee Wallace made one decision that changed horror forever. He refused. Now, I'm sure that this wasn't all completely his idea, because I know there's accounts of Tim pushing back here, but he refused to bury Curry beneath mountains of prosthetics. Instead, he wanted audiences to still recognize the man underneath, because Curry's greatest special effect wasn't some studio trick, it was his face. His eyes constantly shift between kind of interested, kind of playful, kind of curious, to absolutely predatory. Sometimes in the same sentence even. That's why Pennywise works. It's all Tim. It's all smiles. He's like someone trying to make a child feel comfortable, and then suddenly, it's not even that the smile changed, but everything behind it does. He is a vicious character. Behind the scenes, Curry intentionally kept some distance from the younger cast while he was still in the full makeup. He wanted so many of those reactions to feel spontaneous rather than just something rehearsed. He wanted to get to the real fear of these kids. And you can feel it in this film, especially during the scenes with Georgie. The child actors they're not reacting to some crazy rubber monster. As much as I love prosthetics and, real effects, I mean, Curry understood that they're reacting to him, that he understood the predator. Predators don't need to scream. They lure you in. They're charming. They kind of, hiya, Georgie. They bring you in. It might honestly be one of the most deceptively friendly greetings in horror history. Hiya, Georgie. Tommy Lee Wallace made America afraid of clowns again. Of sewers. Not through gore, not even through like a jump scare, but through Tim Curry's amazing fucking performance. Somehow still, this was a PG horror film. That still blows my mind. PG. Can you imagine pitching this today? Some sort of shape-shifting child murderer, dead children, blood exploding from sinks, kids hunting through abandoned buildings, and somehow the MPAA is going to look at this and say, yeah, the parents can figure it out. Millions are going to watch. Millions are going to rent it. If you grew up during the VHS era, I'll bet you dollars to donuts, you probably remember that oversized white double cassette box sitting proudly on the shelf. Blockbuster. Hollywood Video, the local rental store. For me, it was Video Giant, Mr. TV, American Video. Farger Lake Market, shout out to you, Battleground, Washington. The local rental store, it didn't matter. The box was always there. And grabbing it, it wasn't just renting another horror film, it was making a fucking commitment. I'm serious. Nearly 3 hours, 2 tapes, man, that thing was bulletproof. You could kill somebody with an It double tape. This was something that you didn't just casually throw on before dinner. This was an event. Families watched this together. Friends talked about it Monday at the fucking water coolers. Kids dared one another to finish it. I mean, before there was a social media, everybody knew who Pennywise was. Hell, there's a band named after him. Even people who'd never seen the miniseries knew that clown. That's when you know, dude, you have created an absolute icon. There's so many things that you could say about this film. Looking back, 1990s, it should have failed, man. It's an 1,100-page novel. It's network television. It's PG. It's got all sorts of limitations. It's this director, Tommy Lee Wallace, carrying the weight of one of Stephen King's biggest stories on his shoulders. By all logic, this should not have worked. This should have been another forgotten made-for-TV adaptation, but instead, it became something much bigger. This became a cultural event, a watershed moment. This changed my young little life at 7 years old. I was terrified, and I became a horror fan for life right around this time. I remember, why was I allowed to sit up and watch this, right? I remember Papa Howard sitting in the chair drinking a cold Budweiser in a can, right? In a can. Those pull tab cans, 1990, baby. This thing became something massive. It became a movie that your older brother dared you to watch. It was just something that was on while I was sitting there. It was wild for kids that watch a premiere, man. It was a movie that your parents probably should not have ever let you see. Wasn't a lot of bad words in this. There was some domestic stuff. There was some assault. There was some actual small gore in here. There was a lot of implied consent and just weird timing to this film. This movie you talked about at school the next morning because everybody else watched it too. That's kind of what we've lost today when you think about streaming and everything that's going on in the world. Everyone watches something different. I miss those days where you had to be there to know what was going on. We have different schedules now, but back then, we didn't have these different algorithms feeding us different content. We had 2 nights. And it wasn't like it was on cable TV as big as that was starting to become in the early 90s. Millions of people had broadcast television, ABC. Millions of people shared the exact same nightmare. For a little while, it felt like Pennywise belonged to all of us. Not because he was the most bloodthirsty horror villain, not because the special effects were even really all that groundbreaking, if we're going to be real. Hell, that giant spider still looks goofy as shit. I'll be real with you. But because Tim Curry understood something that so many horror villains never do. The monster isn't what stays with you, it's the feeling that does. The uneasy feeling you get when you walk past a storm drain, yeah, you're welcome. The hesitation when a balloon drifts by itself, especially if it's red. The thought that maybe, just maybe, something is smiling at you back from the darkness. What's under the bed? That's what gave it an entire generation. It was fear with imagination. And somehow, Tommy Lee Wallace managed to pull that off under a PG rating with no gore, no buckets of profanity, no torture porn, just incredible atmosphere, a pretty damn good, I would even say phenomenal cast, one of horror's greatest performances in Tim Curry, and a story about friendship that's just as important as the monster chasing them. For me, it all started in a little town called Battleground, Washington, 7 years old, waiting for this weird clown everyone kept talking about to come across my television screen. I had no idea what I was about to watch, something... Hell, man, it was going to stick with me for the next 35 years. That clown turned a generation of kids away from the circus, let's be real. It made us all look twice at sewer drains. It cemented itself as one of horror's greatest icons of all time. And no shame against the Bill Skarsgård. I actually like those new It movies, for the most part. Welcome to Derry's got its moments, man. But some movies entertain us. Some movies scare us. But every once in a while, just like the novel, a movie becomes more than that. It becomes a memory. Stephen King's It isn't just one of the greatest horror miniseries ever made. It's a shared childhood experience. One that so many of us survived together. We have our own trauma. We're connected. And somehow, tell you, we're still talking about it all these years later.